Now, Doug, time to dive in. Man, you got a 6 book series here, and it's funny because your protagonist is kind of somewhat like a gentleman on 24, to my understanding, and we don't know if he should be a hero. We don't know if he should be a villain. I'll tell you what, though, since it is a 6 book series, why don't you start from the beginning and bring us up to the sun? We got about a good 15 minutes of free talk time. I'm going to turn it over to you and tell us about the books.
Okay. Well, first of all, if you'll allow me, let me spell the last name for those who are trying to find it on the internet. The last name is Dahlgren, and hopefully that'll assist you in finding me in both the website and on Amazon. And Kevin, the book series, the first book is entitled The Sun, Silas Rising. This particular character is going against the grain somewhat of the heroes that are out there today. Right now, fantasy and science fiction seem to be the most popular venues and agendas that are going on. And I have to admit that when I leave a theater, even now, after a real good super action movie that's got a fictitious type of a hero in it, I often wish that that hero had been a little more human and that the situations that he faced were perhaps a little bit more realistic. Silas, my character, has no superpowers. He does have some very nice toys, though. And some of these toys are based on real weapons and tools that may or may not have been prototypes submitted to the Department of Defense. Some of them I just make up. The fun part of all this is that, honestly, you have to look them up to tell, because there are some of the toys that Silas uses that actually were prototypes and actually were one-offs that were sent in to the Department of the Army or Department of Defense as submissions for potential weaponry. So there's some pretty neat stuff in there, and again, you get to decide whether you believe in it or not. My hero, Silas, is a flesh and blood hero. And the situations that he gets into are human. There's no invaders from outer space or mutant creatures that fly around, anything like that. There's plenty of that out there, and I'm not putting it down. But the situations that Silas gets into are serious. They're like things that you'll recognize in today's news, and they're dealt with through very human means.
Well, you know, Doug, I was looking at some of your material and I was looking at some of the interviews that you went through, because you've done several book signings, you've had several interviews, and one reporter said that it seems like a political thriller. Can you clarify that for us?
People want to take it, the targets that this Silas goes after tend to come from the political world. And so people immediately want to tag that as being either left or right. There's nothing to do with politics of that nature as reasons for an individual in office to be selected by this character. And again, all of this is fiction. Everybody knows that all of our politicians are out there looking for our best interest at all times, and none of this could possibly ever happen. But for the fun, there are some folks in these books who actually use their positions and their power to stay in power. And by that I mean if it's necessary to hurt somebody who's in their way, these fictitious characters have done that. And then they hide behind their power and their position to avoid the law. And that's the type of individual that Silas has uncovered. The story, the first book, goes into details about how he came about, how he discovered this layer, this dark layer of evil that is in the political business, and how he goes about primarily verifying that these folks are what he suspects them to be, because he certainly doesn't want to get involved in something that could be handled at the voting booth or something that could be handled through the court of law. But if the party is as described, then he seeks to remove them from office. So he is an assassin, and that is the thing that the reader is left to ponder, as are the other characters who come into association with Silas. They have to make a decision. Are they going to turn this guy in? Are they going to call him a murderer or a killer? or are they going to actually help him? And that's really what the interest in the book is. People who make that decision and join the team, the characters in the book, and then, of course, the readers, as you can tell by it being 6 books, there has to be quite a group of readers out there who have decided that he's a hero.
You know, what I found interesting, though, was he patterned his approach from my perspective and from what I could see and what I looked up, and correct me if I'm wrong, he patterned his approach after dealing with these individuals who exercise all of this evil and hide behind their political power after the Sons of Liberty. Can you expound on that a little bit for us?
Oh, absolutely. The character himself, by the way, he stays somewhat secretive. Silas is not his real name. Silas is a name that he assumes, and it's a part of his cover, a part of his rules. And that name, Silas itself, is taken from one of the Sons of Liberty back in the American Revolutionary period, Silas Downer, who was one of the original Sons of Liberty in the Boston area. But this character is a only child born to parents late in life. He's somewhat spoiled, as a child of that nature would be. His interests were studying the American Revolution, and he got very deeply into that and found that his heroes, prior to his need to go out and seek these people out, the evil, he found that those heroes primarily were the Sons of Liberty. And so naturally, his ethics, his morals are patterned after that. That's what he appreciates. That's what he knows and understands. Of course, as with any story, there has to be some tragedy. There is a tragedy that befalls his parents. I don't want to go into the details because that's a part of the story. But that is what drives him to look into a little bit more about how could what happened to them possibly have happened. And it leads him to this area, this underbelly of our society, that he now has the motivation, he also has the means and the desire to go after them. And again, there's more about him really in the book, so I don't want to go into too terribly much detail about what motivates him, because that's the fun of reading it, because the reader gets the reader gets to decide whether they want to be on Silas's team or not. Now, halfway through the book, you actually find out what his real name is and where he's from, and that becomes a major portion of the rest of the series. But something that people really appreciate, you mentioned the Sons of Liberty, and that's a very important part of this. Each of the books has a quotation at the very beginning. There's a prologue, and then right before chapter 1, there is a quotation from one of the men of that era, whether they be an actual Son of Liberty or just someone who was participant in the American Revolution. But the one that sets the standard and starts everything, the quotation at the very beginning of the first book, is from Edmund Burke. And that quotation is, "All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing." And I think it speaks to us in every generation, really. And kind of sets the stage for what is to come. He is one man who decides to do much more than nothing. And
well, Doug,
go ahead.
Before we go on this next break here, you have several other books other than The Sun. Can you tell us the names or the titles of those other books that's a part of this 6-book series? We know The Sun is the first one. What are the other remaining books as well? And also, after you tell us that, do you have to read those books in order?
Very good question. Yes, this particular series, it is suggested that for them to make the best sense to you and for full enjoyment, that you do read them in order, because they do track. The Sun, Silas Rising, is about the character, and it gives you the chance to understand this character and make your decision about him. The second book in the series is called The Only Constant, and this takes that character and puts him through the ringer. There are all types of situations, and everything that could possibly go wrong seems to happen at one time. And so this particular character has to be the only constant throughout these situations. and he does a good job of it. The third book is titled The Basics of Fundamentals. Now, that's kind of a redundant title to some, but really it's talking about the way this character, Silas, and I just gave a little bit away there, didn't I? The way Silas looks at the world. There are basic fundamental facts and ways that we should operate and conduct ourselves, and he's trying to get back to those basics. The story is somewhat about a attempt to overthrow the government, and this character gets involved in stopping that. The fourth book is entitled The Four Samaritans. As you can imagine, his attempts at remaining secret don't last that long. He gets surrounded by people, and some of them are actually colleagues that he relies on and uses. The Four Samaritans, all of the subjects that are taken up in these books are things that bother me or interest me. The Four Samaritans kind of hinges on the Natalie Holloway situation, and those who don't remember that, she was the young lady from Alabama who went down to Aruba on a school trip and disappeared. There's a lot of conjecture as to what really happened to her, and we pray that it wasn't human trafficking. But I take a look at that mystery and kind of have my shot at it through this story and have the characters deal with it. So that's what The Four Samaritans was about. 8 of 6 is book 5. I hope I'm not running too long, Kevin.
No, you're fine. You're doing just fine.
6 is a tricky little title. This is where there is an actual SEAL team who had a mission that went awry. It was a compromised operation, as they say, and the men are brought back. It is such an embarrassment to the people in charge that this particular SEAL team was disbanded and the men were discharged and sent on their way. Suddenly, someone in the statistics department of the Navy starts picking up on the fact that members of that particular team are being murdered, and they're being murdered rapidly, too quickly for the regular law to have time to figure this out and stop it. So, of course, someone with Silas's ethics and morals and not worrying so much about the absolute rule of law, they call him in to find out who's killing these men and to stop it immediately. It's a little different type of a story because usually the character knows who he's going after and why, and in this case he's starting from square zero. He has to figure out what's going on, and with the help of other agencies, he does that, and it's an interesting story. I hope that those, particularly you guys in the military, will appreciate the description of the SEAL team and the way their operation was pulled off. The last book is called The Daedalus Directive. Daedalus, of course, those of you who study Greek mythology know, was Icarus's father. And the Daedalus Directive is simply do not get too close to the sun. This character, of course, has enemies, people from the political world and the drug cartels and others who don't like the fact that he's out there coming after him. So, of course, they set people in motion and try to get rid of Silas. The title, I guess, is indicative. You don't want to get too close to the sun, and it kind of winds up some minor plots that are carried through the last 4 books and brings this series to a close where it's not really necessary going forward to read them in order. These 6, yes. After that, if we go back to anything involving Silas and any of his team members, then you'll be able to read them kind of like you do a James Bond book or what have you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Mr. Doug Dahlgren. He's the author of the 6-book series, The Sun. We're going to go on a quick break once again, and when we come back, Doug will be making his final comments here on the Kevin Zimmerman Show. Now, while we're on break, you have another opportunity. If you didn't win the first time, you'll get an opportunity to win this time. Just go to the Kevin Zimmerman Show Facebook page and then say to me, I too want Doug's books. That's all you got to do. Go to the Kevin Zimmerman Show Facebook page and say, I too want Doug's books. Now, Doug, real quick, before we go on break once again and come back with your final comments, tell the listening audience where they can go once again to check out your information.
Please. Thank you very much. The website is Doug Dahlgren. That's DougDahlgren.